Let's have a conversation about this new syndrome that they've engineered up called gangstalking syndrome. This is used to explain our rantings and voicings about being tortured and abused for years. So now they've come up with this thing called gangstalking syndrome that they can explain it all away and blame it all on. And of course, people believe that, and we'll talk about why. So they've got this thing called gangstalking syndrome, which actually does exist. It's just that it typically only exists after they have initiated psychological warfare and torture on a targeted individual. So while this does occur and exist, it is at the result of their own hands. So again, they're explaining to you what it is. They're just not giving people the whole story. And people are taking it as the whole story. They hear gangstalking syndrome. Oh, well, okay. I'll draw my own conclusions and that'll be the reality of it. Right. So, they've got gangstalking syndrome. We have the real names for these. We have psychiatric fraud, engineered psychosis. People like to throw things around like gangstalking syndrome, schizophrenia, and that's as far as it goes. Nobody ever has the discussion of engineered psychosis, psychiatric fraud. These things exist as well. And people might say, you might get a couple in the basket that say, oh, yeah, that does exist. Yes, indeed. But I don't think that it's actively happening or that it's actively happening to you. Okay, well, we've just seen the level that you're able to entertain objectively about the world and your surroundings. That's nice. That's a very nice display. I hope that works out for all of you. How is psychiatric fraud brought about against a person? Well, it's a lot more than someone just calling you crazy. It's more like a large misunderstanding of sorts. How is this done? Through engineered psychosis. Now, when someone uses this term, most people's reaction is, oh, that can't happen, or that's impossible. And sure, they would be right half of the time if we didn't have all the technological advances we've had in the last 50 years. It's technology that makes this possible on the scale that we know it to be today. Okay. Now, how is this psychosis engineered exactly? A few different ways. In terms of technology, it's through electronic harassment. Other parts of gangstalking. Other parts of the gangstalking program include gaslighting, street theater, and when all of these come together, you get a batch of psychosis-induced mind control, so to speak. Okay, what are these technologies? We went over this yesterday. We're going to go over it again. Open current projects. DARPA, Sonic Projector Project. The Army has a Voice to Skull project. Please look into all of these. Air Force, microwave technology used to create sound. Marine Corps, Medusa Project. The State Department, Voice to Skull project. All right, so different patented versions of these technologies. Many different patented versions. So a lot of different organizations, entities working on this. Who are they testing this on? Us. Us, the general population of the world, in fact. So that's how these are actually being engineered. It's through a series of on-foot tactics and technological advances that make these mind control tactics actually possible. And these programs and these softwares. So here we are. Now, what they call gangstalking syndrome in hopes of making it look like something organic going on with the individual in their brain. And people believe this, as they believe just about everything that Google and Wikipedia tell them. And they believe it, furthermore, without checking any of the references or even glancing at them. Have you noticed that? Nobody looks into these references. Just scroll down to the bottom and at least look at the names. So basically we're at the point where if you don't agree with Wikipedia or Google, there's something wrong with you. When really the problem is you're just capable of thinking for yourself. And that's become a problem that apparently has to be eliminated because it's such a threat, thinking for yourself. Or really just thinking at all. Having thoughts on your own accord is what is trying to be ultimately eliminated. How is gang stalking possible? How are these service workers, EMTs, fire department, medical staff, the police department, how is something so outrageous possible? Well, first of all, it only seems outrageous if you don't know the facts and the evidence and the documentation. It also seems outrageous. The other side of that is conditioning and programming and the media and all this design to cause you to have a different association with words like conspiracy and topics like these, like mind control, like technology. Gang stalking. You're supposed to have, as you do, a distorted view, an opinion of these things. It's worked beautifully, this conditioning thing, this Hollywood thing. So how is this service worker harassment made possible? Well, you can thank local Agenda 21 of the United Nations for that. This was implemented during the War on Terror when we invaded Iraq due to false flags like 9/11. Many, many, many false flags have led up to this point. My God, I could go on and on about those. So, they implement this agenda on a global, local level, a global/local level. And what that means is it's implemented within your community, within individuals. It actually says that. We know what that really means. Other people probably means it's some kind of volunteer program, giving back or something. No, it actually means that they're torturing your individuals, community, and neighbors. Yeah. So, and it's global because it's not just going on here, it's going on in other countries. So communities, individuals all around the world. All right, so local Agenda 21 of the United Nations is what has provided the government with the funding and the financial incentives for these corporations to fund the police department, provide them with these technologies. Now, how do we get our street perps and our gutter rats? That's how the police avoid due process. That's how they avoid paperwork, by employing these service workers and street perps, these visual antis that have no basic intelligence whatsoever, and that's who's going to do this kind of job. A person who truly can't think for themselves and has no desire to. just, they do what they're told. They think they're badasses, but really they're just doing what they're told for gift cards and a little bit of money and an ego boost. And they think that, you know, they're hand in hand with the police department. They think they're powerful, and when really the police are just trying to get rid of them along with us. Hitting two birds with one stone. And I know I'm really repeating a lot of this information, guys, but I'm trying to do a little bit of a recap here for our newbies. And I just want to go over some of the big pieces of evidence here and language, so that we're not just coming on here ranting and talking about our horrible circumstances. We're talking about why these circumstances are possible, what these tactics are called, where they came from, how they're used, why they're used, the big picture of all of this. So that's Local Agenda 21 of the United Nations. Thanks, UN. Which is really just a roundtable of absolute madmen, psychotic Luciferians. Excuse me. So I wanted to go over something a little bit different here today. Dating a perp. This happened to me twice. At least twice that I know of. It's really... Well, I mean, I didn't know at the time, but it's really, not towards the end, interesting, though, to study them. One of these dudes I dated was really monotoned and, like, zombie-like and just emotionless, sociopath, really. And, but what you can always tell is the ego. The ego is a common trend throughout your perps, but the handlers and the ones that are up on the higher levels of your campaign, they're going to be more egotistical, more sadist. And I dated one of these, the ego. And I just totally, I mean, this was before I had knowledge of my campaign, and I had a lot of faith in people, and I still do, just not everyone, you know, like I used to. And I just, I would forgive, and I was so not judgmental. So things like this, it was very easy for things like this to get by me. While I would recognize them, I would be very appropriately, I guess, accommodating is how I felt about judgment and coming across people of a psychotic nature or just a different nature, really. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that until you start playing this game of, you know, it's you or them and it's your life, and these turn out to be actual assassins. That changes the game quite a bit, but still, you get the idea, right? So the ego sadist is really interesting. Though that one was, I really chalked it up to him just being like selfish and really driven like me. But it turned out that he was just a gang-stalking psychopath left over from the war, dying to prove that, you know, he wasn't just another civilian. That's very common. You get a lot of these ex-military, and I mean, they've already been so brainwashed for years. God bless them. But you notice that. I mean, a lot of this is ex-military and these intelligence shoot-off agencies. I don't have it in my notes, the exact name for that. Yeah, and you also get the judgmental perps, right? There's a huge trend amongst perpetrators. Usually stage 2 perps, I've noticed. So the ones who are told lies, they believe they're doing good work, or they just don't care. They really want to make you feel bad about yourself and think there's something wrong with you. When, yeah, I guess there really is something wrong with you by today's standards. And that's that you're a thinker. Or you're just not a psychotic, globalist Luciferian. That's really what makes the target spectrum so broad these days. If you're just not willing to go along with mass torture and genocide, then you're next on the chopping block. It's just if you're a thinker, they're going to dick around with you a little bit more because they want to study you, experiment you, figure out, maybe why the heck you're still surviving. They learn a great deal from us. Just, we've said it before many times, lab rats. That's really what it is. It's lab rat testing for their own benefit and their own extension of life and power and financial gain. They bet on us. It's a game of Christians and lions. They're just betting on us up from their round table. And then whoever loses... See, nobody ever actually loses in their game. Because if they don't win their bet, what? We die? Are they betting on who's going to survive, who's not? What false flags will be successful and which ones won't. I mean, war games. It's war games played on a little board. These are people's lives. They're just played like a game of Risk. It's just so silly to think of how detached we've been for years, so detached and assuming, but we always assume, we've got some dirty politicians, most of them. But in terms of how bad I thought it was, it's so much worse. So much worse. I mean, what did we think was happening? Putting people in this amount of power position with this amount of technology. We're always talking about these things getting into the wrong hands. Well, they have. And what did we think was going to happen? No, it's time to come together, get back to the simplicity of life. You hear Hollywood say this a lot. You climb to the top, you climb to the top. Somehow I'm, getting unhappier. I'm not saying that stuff and unhappiness go hand in hand. No, I'm saying the stuff that they've presented to you and the path that they've presented to you in order to gain said stuff brings great trials of darkness and unhappiness. It doesn't have to be that way. But God forbid you think up another way. They can't have that. You start doing things your own way. Whew. Well, look what happens. I start making camps and lists, creating racial divides. Taking away borders. Making up disorders. Psychiatric fraud campaigns. Just making up rules as they go. And they're able to do this. See, the internet for them has really helped them. Right? The technology has helped them immensely. But now it's getting to the point where it's absolutely hurting them. It's going to get to the point where it cripples them because of our community and the progress we're making and the information that we are able to obtain now as a result of the internet. So we're seeing it begin to backfire. Let's just hope that it completely backfires before it's too late.